give us your name and talk about where you're currently living?
Okay, my name is Desiree. I currently live in St. George, Utah. Um, Actually, I live in a suburb of St. George called Washington, Utah, but it's all kind of the same thing.
Yeah, totally. So, what about your experience in St. George or Washington made you want to reach out to us for this interview?
Well, St. George is just such a special place. And I believe right now it is the fastest growing city in the United States, if not, and I know in the state of Utah for sure. But so, yeah, it's definitely people are starting to recognize what a gem this is. And I'm from St. George. So it's like a bittersweet thing because it used to be a small town and we kind of had it all to ourselves. So I love St. George and I'm so happy that people are starting to experience the beauty that it is. But at the same time, I don't want the population to boom too much because I like small towns.
Right. Yeah. So, what are some things in specific about St. George that you like?
My favorite thing is the natural beauty. We live in an area where three different desert climates converge. So we live at the convergence of the Mojave Desert, the Colorado Plateau, and the Great Basin. And that creates for so many colors. The mountains are so colorful. We've got a lot of reds and pinks and white mountains and all these different colors. And there's parts where like the white and red kind of blend together, and you've got like these striped mountains. So it's just really beautiful. I love the outdoors. I love hiking. We've got like, I think it's something like 300 days of sunshine a year. So not only is it beautiful, but it's great weather most of the time. Today's actually a bad weather day, but that's not usual. Usually we have sunshine, warm weather. Our winters are pretty mild. We do get really hot in the summer up to like the 120-degree range probably. But you know, at least we cool down at night and in the mornings. And I know there's some really hot places like Phoenix, I've heard never cools down really at night, but at least here in St. George, you can get up at 6, 7 a.m. and it's dropped into the 60s or 70s in middle of July, you know, which so it gets cool enough in the mornings that you can still enjoy. Anyway, I just think it's the perfect climate. Winter, spring, and fall. It's like you can be outside almost every single day, sometimes even in short sleeves in the winter. So I love that. I love the weather. I love the nature.
Delightful. That does sound wonderful. On the flip side, are there some things that you could live without or wish were different about St. George?
The traffic. And again, that's one of those things where it's like I've lived here my whole life. Not I haven't lived here my whole life. I grew up here, moved away for 6.5 years, and I moved back after I graduated college. Um, but I remember, like, I think back to when I was first learning how to drive as a high school student, and I remember our streets were like almost empty, and now they're just super full. So it's not like our traffic is terrible. I mean, it's nothing compared to like LA or New York or even northern Utah, but it's more than I'm used to. And it's like our infrastructure wasn't set up for that. We were set up as a small town originally, and now we're growing faster than we can kind of handle. It feels like to be. So the traffic is getting really bad. We do get a lot of snowbirds. So people who live in northern Utah come down to live here in the winter since it's so much warmer. And that kind of creates for an influx of population in the winter months as well. But I mean, other than that, I wouldn't really change it. And one thing I forgot to mention that why I love St. George is also super safe and like a super family friendly place, which I personally enjoy the low crime and the family environment.
It's delightful. Overall, would you recommend someone else move to St. George?
Again, it's like, yes, but no, because we want to keep it all to ourselves, right? So it's kind of, I say, come here for a visit, come enjoy our scenery. Um, yeah, if you want to move here, great, but but it's like a selfish thing, right? It's like we want to kind of us locals are kind of like, well, we want to kind of keep it to ourselves because we love it so much. Um, and I really think the growth right now, it's a good thing, but it is more than we were set up to handle,
Mm-hmm.
quite frankly. Infrastructure just isn't ready. It's just kind of it's a lot of that growth and sprawl type thing. Yeah. So
Yeah,
pros and
totally.
cons.
So you mentioned that you moved away for a little bit there in the middle. Where else have you lived?
So I've lived in Mexico. Um, I was living there as a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And then I also lived in Virginia. I went to college back east, a little town called Buena Vista, if you're pronouncing it with Spanish pronunciation, but the locals call it Buena Vista, and that's what you have to call it. A little town called Buena Vista, Virginia. I've also lived there.
Wow. So I can kind of guess the answer to the next one, but which of those moves was like a bigger deal, like a more big of a change?
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting question. Because I know it seems like it would be Mexico, but you know, I was like so prepared to my mind mentally, I was like, oh, Mexico's gonna be so different than the US that it was actually less of a culture shock than I was expecting. Whereas when I moved to Virginia, I was expecting it to not be a culture shock. And then it kind of was. So it's kind of like an expectation thing because I expected Virginia to be less of a culture shock, then that made it more of a culture shock, you know? So
Hmm.
I don't know. It was different for me. The part of Virginia that I was in, because I also spent a lot of time in like DC. I had friends living up there and things like that. So um, DC is like a whole different ball game, right? And that Northern Virginia is totally like the more city vibe and everything. And then where I lived, which was about 3.5 hours south of DC, was country, you know, and they have like accents that I wasn't used to. So I was shocked at how different it was compared to what I was expecting. And then obviously Mexico, I mean, I had to learn Spanish. That was different, but I was expecting it to be so different that the adjustment, I was like more mentally prepared for the adjustment than I was for when I moved to Virginia, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. So what about that experience was positive, like moving around? Like, what would you do again if you had to make another big move like that?
Oh, I loved all my experiences. I always tell people once you've lived in different places, it's like no matter where you go on this planet, you're going to be missing people. And that was the biggest thing to me. It's like I'm in Virginia and I miss my people in St. George. I'm in Mexico and I miss my people in Virginia. Wherever I am in St. George and I miss my people in Mexico. So it's like wherever I go now, it's like I've got little pieces of my heart kind of scattered in these places. I just think every place has something beautiful and unique about it. And that's what I love. That's why I wanted to do this interview because I think it's so important for people to just understand the background of a place and to really just try to be a part of the culture of the place you're in rather than like try to fight against it or change it. Just like let it be, kind of, just experience it, let it be what it is. That's honestly to me what I enjoyed about moving different places was just learning about the people, learning about their culture, why they do things the way they do. And like I said, even in our own country, it can be so different, which was surprising to me how people can live so differently just in different parts of the country.
Delightful. Do you have any advice for people that might be undertaking a similar cross country or intercountry move?
Um, Honestly, I just say you just have to go for it. Like it can be scary. And I remember I was 18 when I moved to Virginia and I had like no money. I didn't know anybody out there. I was across the country, 2,000 plus miles away from home, and I didn't know a soul, you know? But I'm glad I did it that way because for me, that was the most authentic way. And that's what it was about for me, was just immersing yourself in a new environment and just letting yourself kind of enjoy that. So I think my biggest advice would just be to go for it. Let yourself fully live that experience and don't have expectations. Like I feel like the less you expect, the more you can just have an authentic experience.
Delightful. That is wonderful. Has Best Places helped you at all in your travels?
So yeah, I didn't find best places until about a year ago. So I haven't really moved um, since I found best places. But I definitely have looked into like other places, thinking about, what kind of place would I like to experience next. And it has helped. I thought it was really nice just seeing all the details they have about, you know, housing and crime rates and schools, you know. So, I mean, it's really interesting to me. I think I can see how it would help me in the future. I'm not planning on moving anytime soon, but I also am not planning on staying in St. George forever. So I can definitely see how it would help me in the future. And I think it's a great website. You guys do a great job.
Thank you so much.